Hello, and welcome to the first ever deep dive, kind of a new educational video series that I'm exploring, maybe getting into, and just kind of explaining my thoughts about certain songs and why I love them so much and why I think they're really cool. So, the first one here that we're going to start with is A Heart Full of Love from Les Mis, one of my favorite musicals. And this is just a great song. And before we get into the theory and why it works and why it sounds cool and what's unique about it, let's take a listen to the part in question.
A heart full of love, a heart full of song. I'm doing everything all wrong. Oh God, for shame, I do not even know your name. Dear mademoiselle, won't you say, will you tell?
I've always found that to be super beautiful, and the key changes in it I just think are done so well. And I kind of want to get into why I think that is, and maybe a little bit of background behind the song and what's going on. So, before we get into the song, what really makes this song unique and interesting and different is the key changes that are in it. In that little segment that we just listened to, the song changes back and forth between two keys, the key of A and the key of B flat. And these keys are based off the major scales that they're derived from. So first, let's look at each key separate, and then we'll see how closely related they are. So here is the A scale. I know it might be a little confusing to look at for a second, but I'll do my best to explain what you're looking at. Basically, we have an A scale here. So if we start from the A, from the very bottom note here, the A scale goes A, B, C sharp, D, E, F sharp, G sharp, and then back to A. And that's kind of all the notes that there are in music. So it kind of just loops and cycles at that point. You can see A, B, C at the end, and a D would come after that, C sharp, whatever. So all of these notes are in the A scale. And if you compare those to the B flat scale, which if you notice, B flat is just one note above an A scale. I colored these in blue to be a little bit different, but the B flat scale has a lot of different notes in it. We've got some flat notes, B flats and E flats. We no longer have stuff like C sharp, F sharp, and G sharp. And in fact, if you look at both of these two scales kind of on top of one another, you get this, which is a very colorful image. But essentially, all of the notes that are just for one scale are in that scale's color. So notes that are just in an A scale are in red here, and then notes that are just in the B flat scale are in blue. And then the notes that are in both are in green. And as you can see, there's only two notes that are in both scales, a D and an A, and that's it. Compared to some of the other scales and other key changes that we might find in songs, this is kind of a more extreme one, in my opinion. We only have two notes that are green, whereas sometimes we could have two different keys that have only two notes that are not green. So in this case, these are two pretty different sounding key tones or tonal centers, one being A, one being B flat. So to be able to transition between them in a way that isn't super obvious to the listener, because I don't think A Heart Full of Love is super obvious when you listen to it, that all these key changes are happening. I mean, it sounds like the song's rising or there is some energy going on, but for it to kind of go through these keys in the way it does, kind of so seamlessly, I think it's just an amazing thing about the song. And it's one of the reasons I really, really love it, because I don't think it is super obvious, and we'll get into why that may be. So those are the key centers, the tonal centers. Let's look at the chords themselves. If we look at just the A scale, we can build a major chord from these notes in the scale. So if we start on A, which is kind of like, we'll call it the 1, because it's the A scale, the note A is the first one in that scale. So that's 1. We can make our chord by going 1 and then the third note and then the fifth note. So if we see here, A is the first note, B is the second, so we don't care about that one. C sharp is the third, D is the fourth, and E is the fifth. So if we would want just the 1, 3, and the 5, which makes up our A chord, we're going to take out all this other stuff. So that's what I did here. I took out all the other stuff. I'm just looking at just these three notes. This is what makes an A chord sound like an A chord. It's these three notes combined. And as you can see, again, it loops kind of forever. So there's an A at the top, and even out of frame here, there'll be another C sharp, there'll be another E. But if we compare this to the B flat chord, which we can make in the same way, this is the B flat scale again. We can take that first note, the B flat, skip the C, get the D, skip the E flat, get the F. We'll make the B flat chord the exact same. And if we look at these two chords back to back, we can see just how different these two tonal centers and these two chords are from one another. I mean, the A chord and the B flat chord have no notes in common. They're all different. If you can see, C sharp in one, C sharp is not in the other one. It's a D, the E and the F. And in fact, if you look at these two back to back, not only was A and B flat just one note different from one another, but all of the notes are one note different from one another, and they all rise in the same way. So the A, if we go right from an A chord to a B flat chord, the A will go right to B flat, the C sharp would go right to D, and the E will go right to F. And as you can see over here, if we look at the actual music to this, all of those notes are rising. They're all going up by one note. We can see that again here. A up, C sharp up. Up is kind of like to the right here. So E to F going up. All of these notes are going in one direction up, and that makes it very easy to recognize as a listener, like, whoa, something new has happened, and it's kind of easy to tell. It's really hard to hide a transition like this from the audience. I mean, we're in the key of A, we're chilling in the key of A, and then all of a sudden all the notes go up by one. It's kind of like in a pop or rock song where there might be a very sudden key change, and even if you're not a musician, you can tell, oh, they're singing a little bit higher now, and everything has moved up. That's kind of what you would normally get in a key change like this, and it would even be kind of a stark one at that, because all of these notes are very different from one another. So it would be kind of hard to hide this, and if it happened too often, too many times, it would sound, I think, a little bit sloppy and dirty to the listener. It would start to sound like random notes. All these notes are kind of changing with no real sense of where we're going or why we're doing what we're doing. So how does the composer to A Heart Full of Love combat this? How do they make this transition a bit hidden, and also make it so that it's a bit of a, less of a stark difference between these two chords? I mean, at the moment, every single note is changing to another note. Maybe we can start there. So what the composer does is, instead of going right from an A chord, which is, again, that's the home of the key of A, which we're in, and going right to B flat chord, which is the home of the new key, we're going to kind of go around that a little bit. So we're starting in the key of A, and because we're not going to B flat right away, we have the time to kind of mess around in the key of A and kind of do some other things and go to some other chords, such as a B minor chord. Now, B minor, as you can see, it's all in the key of A. All these red notes we can find in that A scale. So again, B, a D, and an F sharp, they're all there. And that means getting to B minor from A, it's not that big of a deal. I mean, these are all notes that we would expect to hear when just playing a song in the key of A. So if we're kind of starting from B minor, but now we want to go from B minor to B flat instead of the A to B flat, things change pretty dramatically, I think, even though it's just like a couple notes different. And again, all these notes are in the key of A, but it's not just an A chord to a B flat chord. Now we're going B minor to B flat, and let's see what happens. So first of all, we have a green note. We have a note that's the same between both of these chords. And if you guys remember, when I showed you the A scale and the B flat scale, there was only two green notes in the whole scale that matched and were in both. One of them was a D, and the other one was an A. And we're going to see both of them in this song. But here we have a D that's staying consistent between the key changes. So we have something it's almost subverting the listener's expectations, because instead of hearing everything that's in A and now everything's in B flat, we have this thing that's kind of bridging that gap, and it's making it smooth, that transition smooth. That D is helping us go from one to the other. And the other thing I love about this, that it just makes me like just so amazed every time I watch it or listen to it and think about it, is that now that we're in B minor, even though the key has gone up, remember we're going A to B flat, and if you remember, let me go back a little bit. All of those notes are supposed to go up, right? We see that over here on the right. All of these notes are going up. But instead, if we go from B minor to B flat, we see that these lines are now going down. The B goes down to the B flat. The F sharp goes down to the F. So even though our key has gone up, A to B flat, the chords themselves have gone down. It's kind of a contrary motion to what's going on one level up in the thinking, you know? Tonally, key-wise, we've gone up, but chord-wise and note-wise, we've gone down. I think it's really hard to do, and again, these changes that are one note apart, you know, like F sharp to F, this is one note apart. If you can get changes that are only one note apart, we call that a half-step relationship. They sound way better and just more consistent than anything that might leap. There's no examples of that in this song, but probably because the composer's really, really good. But if you know, kind of study other pieces of music and composers that don't treat this as well, you might see like an F sharp that goes down to an E, for instance. It's a big jump. We call it a whole step jump, and they're just not as impactful as these half steps are. I feel like this is like so cool on 3 different levels. You have one level where we have now a D that's staying the same between the keys, bridging that gap. We have the notes falling instead of rising, and that makes it so that even though like the rising key, I feel like gives it a lot of energy in this moment. So when the key is going up and it's rising, I feel like that gives the song a lot of energy, but at the same time, since the notes are falling down, there's a somberness to it. There's like excitement, but also some sort of internal feeling or like reservation about the rise of the song. And it makes sense lyrically too. If you go back and listen to the lyrics of this song, everything just feels like so personal, and that's because we have these things that are collapsing and also rising at the same time. There's never something that's just purely getting bigger. And I just love that about this. So this B minor to B flat really just changes everything. All right, so we're in the key of B flat now. The song has taken us from A to B flat, and now we need a way to go back. So how are we going to do that? Again, even if we look at just a normal B flat chord straight to the A major chord, we have everything going down now. You know, we went up, now we have to go back down. But if we just do it kind of standard, or you know, the way that I would first think to do it, which would just be to play B flat to A, everything's going down. Every single note is different, and that makes it very obvious again to the listener about what's going on, and makes it a little bit more stark and brings it out to the forefront in a listener's minds. And that's not what the music is supposed to be doing in this moment of the song. So how do we get back to the key of A from the key of B flat? These are the questions that I'm always thinking of, because again, they're 2 very different keys. So in this case, the composer actually goes to F first. We're in the key of B flat, and we're chilling there, and we're kind of doing some other things in B flat, and we hit this F chord at the end. So let's look at the F chord. As you can see, it's very clearly in the key of B flat. We got all these blue notes everywhere. And F actually has a kind of interesting relationship to B flat, because it really wants to go to B flat. It's like that chord that says, okay, we're ready to go back to home, which in this case, we're in the key of B flat is home. So that's what you're expecting. You hear this F chord and you think, okay, B flat's coming up. Now, the composer has already subverted this once before and has already done so a little bit before this as well. So even when we get to the F chord, maybe it's not as obvious as some other instances of an F chord going to B flat, but this is kind of what an F chord is supposed to do. But let's see what it does instead. And again, you can see this is like so cool to me. Remember, there was only two notes that were the same between these two keys, a D, which we saw in that first transition, and an A, which we see here. The A goes over, it's in an F chord and it's in an A chord. So that A now is bridging the gap. And just like in the last chord, the A is in the middle of the chord too. I mean, we've got that bridging note is right in the middle of our sandwich here, which was the same in the first one too, which I think is really interesting. And now instead of all the notes going down, even though the key went up, which is what happened last time, the key is now going down, but now we have this note, this highest note, C, going up to C sharp, which I think is just amazing because we're going down in key, but we hear, in your mind, you hear this C rising up to a C sharp, and it's what gives it like so much life and energy when we get to this moment in the song. I mean, it really feels like even though we've returned back down to A, we're more energetic and something is bigger than it was the first time. And that's because the C is moving up to a C sharp. And I think that's so incredible because, again, if you remember going back, all of these notes from one key to the next, they're lower. They feel lower. So to find a way to make that C go up to the C sharp, I just think is so beautiful and awesome. And again, we have F going down to an E, another half-step relationship. Every single one of these notes has a half-step relationship to the one beside it, meaning that it goes right to that note right beside it, which is the best type of transitions. And it just feels like a masterclass of how to do this correctly. I mean, going between the key of A and the key of B flat, again, they're very different. They're very different keys. They don't have a lot in common, and yet we're finding ways to transition them using common notes that they do have, and in ways where their traditional kind of relationship, one's lower, one's higher, that's all being hidden. You know, this one is going from B flat to A. That would be like high to low, and yet we've got this note in the middle that goes up. You know, it's just incredible to me how the composer does this. And really, it just makes the song have so much energy, and every time there's a key change, like, I think an average listener might know something's up, but they won't really know that we've gone a tremendous distance here, because A and B flat, they're pretty far away in the circle of force, which I can show maybe a different time. But they're like not easy keys to go between. Or I should say, like, they're not easy to do in a way that's not completely obvious. And I don't think they're obvious here at all. You know, I think maybe an average listener might not even know that key changes are happening. And to me, that's the best type of music, because you can be super, like, progressive in your chord decisions and pick chords that kind of aren't related to another in a more fundamental traditional viewpoint of writing chords. But if things are always kind of random and, you know, don't have a lot in common from one another, and you kind of just go between them without setting them up in just the perfect right way, it's not going to sound good. Like, it just won't sound good. But here is a perfect example of how to do that correctly. We're finding these common notes between the chords, even though there's not a whole lot of them. And we're kind of subverting the feelings of each of these tonal transitions. So I just love this part. I love this song, and I just wanted to share that with you guys. So I hope you like that. If you want more of this, please consider subscribing. Also, you know, I teach lessons. So if you want to learn how to compose or learn how to write other songs like this, or even just want to learn how to play guitar better, or piano, saxophone, drums, I do all that. So look me up. My website will be in the description, and I'll talk to you guys later. Also, I'm doing online lessons right now because of the coronavirus. So even if you're not in the area, be sure to call me up. Thank you. Goodbye.